All right, thank you everyone for joining us tonight for our PSAT results webinar. I'm sure many of you guys have, I guess probably everyone here has gotten their PSAT results back from the tests that were administered about, at some point in October. Some of you took it a couple of weeks ago, some of you took it all the way back in the beginning of October. Either way, you should all have your scores back and your score reports. And today, Jay and I are going to be discussing PSAT scores and what you can do with them, what they mean, what they don't mean, the college admissions implications and not, and then of course what you can do with these results. Once you have them when you're planning your test prep. So this is the agenda that we're going to be discussing today. We'll do a quick introduction first. And then we're really going to get into the nitty gritty of the PSAT, like what the test consists of, what it tests, sort of as I said, like the implications of your scores, such as they are. We're then going to get into a deep dive into the score reports. So actually, if you have your score reports available, if you can log into the College Board website and locate your score reports, or if you have them up on the app, that would be great because we'll look on together through those reports, and I'll show you sort of like how to take the most information out of those as you can, and how to use the College Board's website and its materials to improve your performance on the particular skills that you struggled with on the PSAT. And then after that, we're going to get into recommendations, what you can do now that you have your scores, whether you are a sophomore or a junior. For the freshmen in the audience, most freshmen don't take the PSAT, but if you did, great, congratulations. Of course, everything we're going to be saying to sophomores and juniors will apply to you next year and the year after that. But generally, sophomores and juniors are the ones who are taking the PSAT. And then at the very end, we are going to leave it open to questions. So any questions that you guys have, you can feel free to ask us then. If a question pops up in your head while we're doing the presentation, please put it into the Q&A widget in Zoom there. And then, as I said, we'll get to it at the very end of the presentation. All right, so quick introductions. My name is Nick. I am the founder and owner of First Choice Prep. We're a full service tutoring and college advising company located in northern New Jersey with offices in Livingston and in Milburn. We've been in business since 2010. We've worked with thousands and thousands of kids in the local area and beyond the local area for tutoring in pretty much every subject you can think of, as well as standardized test prep, of course, for SAT and ACT and a host of other standardized tests as well. And then, of course, we do college advising as well with our head of college advising and our whole college advising team, headed up by Jay, who is with me today. Jay, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks everyone so much for joining the webinar. My name is Jay, as Nick introduced. I am the Director of College Advising here at First Choice Prep. I am also one of our few elite test prep tutors, although I am trying to gradually phase out of it at this point, just because college advising work does take a lot of time. I've been doing this this is my actual 10th cycle that I am actually wrapping up right now. So I'm bringing a wealth of experience, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about the PSAT. So let's get started. So, as Nick highlighted, the three main points that we want you guys to walk away with today is one, well, what even is the PSAT, right? And what are the implications behind taking the PSAT? Does it even matter, right? And once, as Nick mentioned, probably most, if not all of you guys, have already received your PSAT results at this point. So in a little bit, Nick is going to walk us through on how to understand the score analysis that you will have received with your score report and how to take advantage of the different areas that the PSAT slash the College Board claims that you should be working on. And finally, we'll close the webinar by just talking a little bit about your plan of action, meaning what do we do with this PSAT score now that we have it? How do we, if you're a sophomore, what do I do next year or what I do for the rest of this year? And especially for our juniors, it'll be a good time for us to really hash out the game plan for test prep. So, PSAT, NMSQT. I know it's a lot of letters. What the heck does this even mean? Well, the PSAT, as the name might suggest, it stands for the preliminary SAT. Some people call it the practice SAT. And the NMSQT stands for the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Now, the reason why we say PSAT slash NMSQT is that the PSAT is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, right? So it's the same test, it's one test, but the College Board sort of likes to give two names to it, right? And as the name might suggest, right, it is a preliminary SAT. The whole point of the test is to provide students with a little bit of a warm up, a taste of what it's going to be like to take the real SAT in the coming months or years, right? It's designed to just give you guys a little bit of a heads up in terms of what you should be expecting when you actually take the real one that colleges will actually see. And the scoring is, as you can see here, a little bit different than the real SAT, as opposed to the real SAT being out of 1600. The PSAT is out of 1520, where the reading and writing portion is scored between 160 and 760, and the math similarly 160 to 760. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the test format. So just like the real SAT, it is computer-based digital exam, but unlike the actual SAT, which is I want to say closer to 3 hours. The PSAT is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And just like the real SAT, it is an adaptive exam, meaning there are two verbal sections, two math sections. We actually call them the modules. And depending on your performance in module one, you will either receive the more challenging module two or the simpler, easier module two. Okay. Usually, if you are able to get about 70% of the questions correct in module one, you will automatically receive the harder module two. Now, some people do ask, well, is it sort of like a scaled system? So if I get 100% correct in module one, do I receive an extremely difficult module two? No, there's only really the easier module two and the harder module two. So everyone receives the same hard module two, and everyone receives the same easier module two. So it's not like it's on a scale of difficulty for module two, right? But in order for you to be able to get a really good score on the PSAT or the SAT, it is important that you get to the harder module two. So if, let's say, you end up really not doing well in module one of either the verbal or the math, and you end up receiving the easier module two, even if you get a perfect score, a perfect mark in the easier module two, your overall scaled score is likely going to be in the 500s. Okay, so it is very important that in order to achieve a high score, we get to that harder module two. Okay. So how does the PSAT factor into college admission decisions? Well, it really doesn't. Okay. As we
Mhm.
had just discussed, it is a preliminary SAT. It is not a score that colleges will see unless you want to tell them how well you did, which you shouldn't, by the way. There, unless you ended up getting like a perfect score, which rarely any student does, right? But it is not something that colleges will see, and it is designed to be practiced. And in some ways, right, when you take the PSAT, you'll need to create your College Board account. So I guess that is one good thing about the PSAT. You're getting a head start on this college application process in some way, right? Um, but it has no bearing on college admissions, unlike the actual SAT, which colleges may or may not see, depending on whether you decide to send the score. Okay. So if it doesn't matter with the college admissions, well, what the heck is the point of taking the PSAT? Well, one, it's, until students take the PSAT, I find that most students don't even really think about, doing test prep, right? But it is something that is a part of every student's high school journey. And when you take the PSAT as a 10th grader, especially, right, it's really going to give you that little nudge that, hey, this is going to be a big component of the college applications, and maybe we should start thinking about it, right? While the PSAT doesn't always indicate how you're going to ultimately perform on the SAT, I do think that it gives a good barometer for how much improvement there could be once you actually start prepping for the test, right? And as Nick will go over and elaborate in a little bit, the score analysis in your PSAT result will give you valuable insight into where you stand and what areas within verbal and math that you could work on, even independently, before you officially begin prep. Okay. And lastly, the nice thing that's really nice about the PSAT, and by the way, this only applies for juniors, so PSAT 11. Those students who perform well on the PSAT 11 may qualify as a National Merit Scholarship semifinalist, and that could lead you to potentially becoming a finalist. And if you become a finalist, there are some scholarship implications that come with becoming a finalist. So let's actually talk about that. I do want to preface that it is extremely difficult to qualify as a National Merit semifinalist, and I do not recommend that you spend months to study for the PSAT just to maybe get, be selected as a semifinalist. As the chart here indicates, roughly less than 1% of those who take the PSAT are chosen to become a national merit semifinalist. Now, it is the benchmark score that you need to achieve for the PSAT to become a national merit semifinalist is state dependent. Well, I will say that New Jersey, which is where we are primarily based, does tend to have the highest cutoff for the score that you will need to achieve on the PSAT. The PSAT score that you achieve will be translated into what we call an NMSC index, which Nick will elaborate on in a little bit as well. But you need to typically achieve above 207 to receive this commendation. And you need to achieve over 222 to actually become a national merit semifinalist. Now, this score of 222 essentially means that out of 750, you need to achieve about a 740 in the verbal as well as math. So, like I said, it is extremely difficult. It is very rare, and there's absolutely no downside to not becoming a semifinalist. But if you just so happen to have done really well, there could be some benefits that come with it. As we stated here, roughly half receive national merit scholarships of about 2,500.
Right. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, and just to put a quick bow on this, like this national merit index of 222, that's like for a competitive state like New Jersey. So that is state dependent. Now the commendation is not state dependent. That is like a nationwide number. Of course, there's unfortunately no money associated with that one, but this index is statewide or state dependent. New Jersey, unfortunately, yeah, 222, 223. This past year was 225. Most people think that that's an anomaly that will like correct itself, but it's tough in New Jersey to get that kind of a score. Okay, so let's talk about the score report. So the PSAT sent you all a report that sort of enumerates your students' performance on the PSAT. Now, from like a top level perspective, honestly, they don't really give you much, I will have to say. They give you this and then a bunch of stuff about like, careers in the state that you live in, which is, I guess somewhat interesting, but completely irrelevant with respect to, how your child did on the PSAT. What it does give you is, of course, your scores on the test. So your scores out of out of 15, 20 on the PSAT. And then, of course, your scores out of 760 on each section of the test, each half of the test. They give you your percentile ranking, which is the percentile, like sort of the where you stand with respect to the other students in your grade who also took the PSAT. So in this case here, this 1120 score is for an 11th grader about 75th percentile, according to this particular report, although I don't know if that is even correct. This could be just like a sample report that they made up with random numbers. But anyway, they would give you your percentile there. They give you percentiles next to your reading and writing and math scores. They also give you your NMSC selection index over here on the right-hand side. So again, that number needs to be in the 200s in order for it to matter in any way whatsoever. Like if you don't get a quote unquote high enough NMSC selection index score to get a commendation, something in the, high two single digits or 210 or something like that, or something in the 220s for an actual national merit scholarship, then this number is totally, completely irrelevant. It is only used for that one purpose. And just a little peek behind the curtain, the way that they calculate this score is they double your verbal score, like reading and writing score. They multiply that score by 2, and then they add your math score, and then they divide by 10. So that's pretty much it. So this is basically 620 times 2 plus 500, all divided by 10 would give you 174. And then, of course, they give you the skills analysis, which is this knowledge and skills part here, which is, quite frankly, the only, well, not the only helpful thing about the score report, but the most helpful thing about the score report. So scores are super important, super helpful as well. But this analysis here tells you sort of like how well relatively you did on each of the sort of larger question categories on the test that you took. So they break up reading and writing into these 4 categories: information and ideas, craft and structure, expression of ideas, and standard English conventions. And then like the number of like little bars that are full is a representation of like your relative performance on those kinds of questions throughout this particular PSAT. So I should just clarify, this does not mean that there are 7 information and ideas questions and you got them all right. This also doesn't mean, by the way, that you got all of the information and ideas questions right. But, if you break them into sevenths, you got enough to fill up all 7 bars. I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, you got basically all of them right, maybe like 1 wrong if you filled them all up. So you can see sort of how well relatively you did on each of these categories. Now, again, to pull back the curtain, because unfortunately the PSAT is not going to tell you what each of these categories means. I am happy to do so now. Information and ideas are like the reading comprehension questions. Craft and structure is also reading comprehension, but like with the vocabulary component, and then like some special reading comp question types. But again, all reading comp. These first 2 categories are essentially all how well you did on the reading comp problems on the test. Expression of ideas is the sort of grammar-y writing skills questions that test like your facility with like transition words and phrases in passages, and also test like, how well you can craft a sentence. You're actually not doing any writing yourself, but you're picking an answer that crafts a sentence properly based on what, the question is asking you for. That's expression of ideas. How well can you express certain ideas? And then, of course, standard English conventions at the end there, those are grammar-based questions. So that's where they test your comma rules. That's where they test really all the punctuation rules that you could possibly think of, misplaced modifiers, parallel structure, subject-verb agreement. That's all standard English conventions questions. And then, of course, for math, this is a little bit more self-explanatory. I will say that advanced math includes higher level algebra 2. So algebra 2 stuff is not all included here in this algebra section. Some of it is here in advanced math. Problem solving and data analysis is kind of like statistics problems, things that deal with percentages and means and medians and standard deviations, all simple statistics stuff, but nevertheless, I would put it in the category of statistics. And then geometry and trigonometry, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. So from there, you can like, I mean, you can get a better understanding of exactly the kinds of things that you need to work on based on that skills report, that knowledge and skills report. I would strongly recommend going to like accessing this from the studentscores.collegeboard.org. That's where you can go and find all of this information if you're struggling to find it. Can't find the email that they sent you, it doesn't open up on the app, whatever. You go to this website, and then if you navigate through it in this way, that I'm going to show you in a second, you can like use your score report to help you like locate the correct like lessons to learn through Khan Academy. All right, so like I'll walk you through this here. So you go there, you click on score details, you click on knowledge and skills. That will bring up that knowledge and skills report that we were just talking about. And then once you're there, you can toggle either reading and writing or math. And then when you go down to those the bar stuff, the where they tell you how well you did on each of the sections or each of the types of questions, I should say, you then click on view skills and example questions in the next score band. You then select the score band that you fell into. They will tell you that in the on the knowledge and skills part of this. So you go there, you select the proper score band, you select the particular category of question, and then they give you like example questions, so like a general taste of what the types of questions are that fall into this category, and the kinds of things that your student should try to learn how to do, try to get better at if they're going to do better on the next test that they end up taking. So this, by the way, is not an actual question from your child's test. It's just an example of the kinds of things in that score band on those, in that question type, that like you probably need to work on based on your PSAT results. If you continue down further on that page, you go to practice and improve. That will take you over to Khan Academy. And then in Khan Academy, you can like do all of the advanced math lessons that they have, your easy advanced math, or you might not need easy advanced math. You start on medium advanced math, you can go up to hard advanced math. They give you video lessons and everything. And of course, practice problems. It's actually pretty great. But what I find equally good, especially, I mean, definitely better for practice, but equally good overall as a prep tool, is the SAT Educator Question Bank, which of course I have up here on the screen. It is a very like largely an unsung and underutilized tool. I find like we use it in our prep with all of our students all the time. But essentially, what this is like a repository of SAT practice questions that the College Board itself has curated to help students prepare for the test that they're going to be taking. So I would definitely locate this. You could just Google SAT Educator Question Bank. This will come up as your first link. And then inside the question bank, you can choose the test that you're preparing for, whether that be the PSAT or the SAT, or even the PSAT 8-9, if you're like an eighth grader applying to ninth grade. And then, yeah, you can like select math or reading and writing. You can select your question type, like, advanced math. Again, these all track, all of these question categories track with the question categories from the knowledge and skills report there. So you select one of those or select however many you want to work on at that particular moment. And then like just an entire, database of practice questions pops up for that particular skill. So like, all of these questions are advanced math questions. You can select even further. You can filter even further, select for difficulty level. You can select for sub skill. There are sub skills within advanced math you can filter for. You can exclude active questions, which means the questions that are on like the blue book practice tests. So if you don't want to spoil any of the practice tests by, doing practice problems from those tests, you can click exclude active questions. Include state standards, I wouldn't worry about at all. Honestly, I don't think that's incredibly helpful, especially to students who are just prepping for the SAT or the ACT. Actually, not ACT, in this case, SAT. But yeah, I mean, like you could just work through these questions. Each of these links to a question that deals with that particular skill, that is whatever difficulty level you want it to be, and whatever sub skill you're hoping to practice for. So it's all there for you. They give you questions, they give you the correct answers, the rationale. And if you want to hide the answers from yourself, which I think many of us would want to do, there's a tool for that as well. You just go over to the export button on the right and then click on no correct answers or explanation. Like, first of all, you would have to select a bunch of questions you want, then click export, then click no correct answers or explanations and export the PDF, and it makes it into a PDF for you. So you can make your own worksheets that deal with the particular question types that you need to work on. So it's a really, really excellent tool. And if you're looking to do any, test prep on your own, get your feet wet, try to improve your skills yourself, I would absolutely use this. As I said, at First Choice Prep, we use this liberally with our students. So I find it incredibly, incredibly helpful. But yeah, I mean, listen, that's pretty much it for the score report. As I said, not a ton that they give you, but you can do a lot with it. And I would recommend, probably rewatching this recording and going back through everything I just said. And, as I said, dipping your toe into that water and seeing if you can improve your skills that way.
All right. So thank you, Nick. So what happens next, right? One thing we didn't talk about is that the PSAT will give you some indication as to your readiness to start prepping for the actual SAT test. But we all know that in addition to the SAT, students also have the option to take what we call the ACT test, right? So one of the things that I want you to think about, regardless of whether you're a sophomore or a junior right now, is thinking about, when do I want to start prepping? Am I ready to start prepping? And if I'm ready to start prepping, what is a good timeline that I should be aiming for, right? Now, we do indicate here that you should plan to take the ACT or SAT in your junior year and sometimes senior year, but we do also occasionally have students who start prepping as a sophomore, especially if they ended up doing really well on the PSAT. Now, there's absolutely no pressure to start as early as a sophomore, but if you are ready to start as a sophomore, there is a little bit of an added benefit that when come junior year, assuming that you are done with the SAT or ACT, you can really just focus on school and not have to worry about standardized testing. Now, the SAT is just, again, one of the two exams that colleges accept for your college applications. So one of the best ways to find out whether the SAT or the ACT is a better fit for you is to take a diagnostic test with us. We do host a diagnostic test every other Sunday. And if you are not able to come to our testing center, or if you live in a location where, like outside of Jersey, where you can't physically make it to our testing location, you are also able to download and register to take the diagnostic on your own at home. That link will be provided to you at the end of the webinar, but you can easily find it on our website, firstchoiceprep.com. Usually when students actually decide to start prepping, they usually designate, I want to say, about at least 4 months to prep, right? And I think when it comes to preparation, consistency is one of the most important things, right? So if, let's say, you are playing a winter sport and you're also playing a spring sport and you are in some major clubs and you don't get home till 8, 9 p.m. every single day, that's probably an indication that you should not be starting prep right now, right? You should look at your calendar, you should look ahead and try to find a good term of about 4 to 5 months at least, where without major interruptions, you can prep consistently, meaning several times a week, whether you meet with the tutor at least once or twice a week, and then you devote independent time to doing homework and applying the knowledge that you learned for at least 1 or 2 times per week as well, right? So look at your calendar and make room in your calendar for preparation. Now, all that said, right? yes, the SAT and the ACT are very important for college applications. However, nothing is as important as your GPA and class rigors, so how you are doing in school. So, especially if you are not ready to start prepping for the SAT or ACT just yet, I do always emphasize to students that you really should be focusing on doing the best you can in school because at the end of the day, you could have an amazing SAT score, but if your GPA is not on par with that score, colleges are not going to look at that score favorably. So, if you are a sophomore right now, Nick, can you take us to the next slide? Remember again, the PSAT doesn't count at all. Okay. It's just PSAT 10. It was just your first exposure to the SAT, ACT. We want you to play the long game, right? As Nick told you, start working on ways to improve your skills in the most needed areas independently, right? And we're not saying that you should be studying an hour every single day, right? But even if you devote 30 minutes, twice a week, right? That can already give you a big, head start for when you actually start doing SAT prep, right? Create an account with Khan Academy, link your PSAT results. It's a great way to practice for free. And Khan Academy has a great curriculum that you can also follow and do practice problems. And again, great way to just kind of get a head start on it. Okay. If you are feeling up for it and you are one of those students that just want to get a head start, contact us, take a diagnostic test with us, right? It's a 3-hour test under standard time, right? That you take. It's a combination of SAT and ACT. We're going to generate a comprehensive report and provide our recommendation as to which exam we believe will be a best fit. And then you can set up a conversation with one of our staff members or with me to discuss the actual details of the score report. And I can also give you a little bit more of an elaborate explanation of what the results mean and what I believe it should be the timeline for preparation. Okay. Now, one of the biggest indicators that of whether or not you are ready to start prepping for the SAT or ACT is what math class you are currently enrolled in. Just to let you know, the ACT math does cover a few more topics than the SAT does. So there is a little bit of even pre-calculus material on the ACT, I want to say. And the SAT math covers through Algebra 2/trigonometry curriculum. So if you are, let's say, currently enrolled in Algebra 1, right? Chances are you're probably not quite yet ready to start prepping. But if you are currently enrolled in one of the set courses, then perhaps you are ready, and we are happy to evaluate whether or not right now is a good time. Okay. But if you're a sophomore, continue to challenge yourself academically. And one of the most challenging parts of, I think, test prep is the reading comprehension. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And one of the best ways to get better at reading comprehension is by regularly exposing yourself to a lot of different styles of reading, right? So you're not just reading novels, but you're reading newspaper articles, magazines, right? Just reading different types of articles can really expand your scope of vocabulary. It could expose you to different styles of writing depending on the category of writing, but also the time when the piece of writing was written. If you are a junior, most important year, as many people say, right? Um, if you ended up doing really well on the PSAT, you will be notified that you are a National Merit semifinalist, after which point you can complete a set of tasks to become a finalist. Again, I want to emphasize the scores do not count. They don't head to the colleges don't need to see that score unless you wish to show it to them because you did really well, right? But if you are a junior right now, we are in the middle of November, and so we have a little more than half of the school year left, right? If you haven't already started test prep, I do really think that you should be starting to think about which exam is going to be the better fit. And just to I'll let you know, since we're in middle of November, if we start prepping even as early as, let's say, next week, right? We would likely aim for the March administration for the SAT at the very earliest. Some schools do offer an April in-school testing, but after March, normally the next official test date is May, and then we have the June test, and then you will be out of school for the year. In regards to college applications, there is a September and October administration also available. Oh, and August. So August, September, and October. But October is the very last test date that you can take if you're a senior and still meet the early application deadlines. So just keep that in mind because you can still take the November and December tests of your senior year, but those scores would only qualify for the schools that you apply in the regular round. Okay. The ACT does follow a sort of similar timeline, but it's almost like that there are some overlapping months, and then there are some months where the ACT is offered, but the SAT is not offered, and vice versa. But both exams are offered 7 to 8 times a year, depending on where you live. But again, as I will always emphasize, grades are the number one priority. Do your best to take the most challenging, most rigorous courses at school and make sure you do well in those courses. Because doing well in these courses will also, as you know, since you're a junior, will qualify you to take even more rigorous courses your senior year.
Great. Thank you, Jay. So yeah, just a couple more things to put a finer point on this. Remember that your PSAT scores are just the beginning. They are not, they don't say everything about you, but like it's a good idea at this point to start thinking about like the actual test prep process. As we've said multiple times today, you really do want to determine whether you're better at the SAT or the ACT before you embark on a test prep plan. There's a couple of options for that. You have your PSAT scores now, and those are just as good as SAT scores. In fact, like the score you got on the PSAT is supposed to be, according to the College Board, that is supposed to be the score that you would get on an SAT if you took an SAT the same day. So the reason it's out of 1520 and not out of the 1600 that the SAT is out of is that the test is like slightly easier, like ever so slightly easier. So they basically are saying, if you were able to get every single question right on this PSAT and you got a 1520 as a result, we still think you would get a couple questions wrong on the actual SAT, and your score would probably be somewhere in the 1520 range. So that's like, again, the point I'm trying to make is that your PSAT scores are like basically what you would get on an SAT if you took it today. So you have that at your, in your hands, in your possession at the moment. At this point, what you could do is one of two things. You could take just an ACT practice test, not the real official test. You don't have to sign up for an official ACT on December 13th and go in and take it and have the scores that count or whatever. You certainly can, but you don't need to do that. You could do a practice test with us. We hold practice tests for the SAT and the ACT every single Sunday up at the Academy of St. Elizabeth in Morristown. So it's like in a simulated testing setting. Basically, it's like it mirrors the experience that kids have on test day. It's kind of the point. The reason we do it is because we want our kids to like feel like they know how to do it when they go into the real test. But you can you can absolutely use that setting to take an ACT like diagnostic test. You'll get a real ACT with the all the correct timing parameters and everything of the test you're going to take, or the ACT that you would take on test day. We'll give you a score on the ACT, and then of course we can compare the scores that you got on the ACT to the scores you got on the PSAT and make a decision from there as to which of these two tests you should be prepping for. That's one option. The other option is, of course, as we've been mentioning a bunch of times today, is you could take our SAT ACT diagnostic comparison test. So this is like a one test thing where you get all SAT sections and all ACT sections, and it tells you. I mean, they're shortened, of course, to make it like a manageable test. You take it in one sitting, so we shorten the sections as a result. Yeah, I mean, like you'll get a full score report that tells you what your starting scores are on the SAT and the ACT, and like a full readout of your performance as well. So this is sort of what the report looks like. There's a couple more pages than just what I've put up here, but um, you get your results. It tells you which one you're better at. You get like your big areas of strength, your, opportunities for growth, your sort of areas of weakness there. A full readout of like your performance on all of the sections of both the SAT and the ACT on this test. So like it's a little bit better SAT wise than what you get from the PSAT, because on the PSAT you get a limited picture, a very limited picture, unfortunately, of like your performance on that test. You get the scores, yes, but the only thing other than that you'll get is like the knowledge and skills report. With our diagnostic, you also get that same sort of performance summary, which is, in my opinion, a little bit more robust even than the one that you get from the PSAT. And then you also get to see like where you got questions wrong, where you got questions right. Like, you can see if time was a major factor for you here. Like you'll see on this math section, if you omitted a bunch of questions at the end, that means that time was a factor for you. Like you can't see things like that on the PSAT score report, unfortunately. So, in my opinion, this is a little bit better. I am, of course, biased. This is our test. I love this thing. But yeah, this is the other option is you can take this diagnostic. And as Jay mentioned earlier, it's an online test. So you can do it at home, comfort of your own home, split it up over a few days, or you can come in and take it with us when we administer it at the Academy of St. Elizabeth. We do that every other Sunday. And then, of course, we also have like partnerships with some high schools in the area where we'll do like a testing event at the school. So we've got ones coming up at West Essex and Columbia High School over the next couple of months. So you can avail yourself of that opportunity as well if that applies. And then, of course, yeah, we are here to help. Another thing I did want to mention. So we are going to be running this SAT crash course in early December, which is like the week right before the December SAT. It's sort of a low hanging fruit tips and tricks class. I'm going to actually be teaching it where where I teach all the students how to like a few sort of like insider tricks and strategies that will help students gain a few more points than they otherwise would on test day. So, for kids who are already prepping for the SAT and taking it on December 6th, like this is a good way to like scrape up a few more points on that test than you otherwise would be able to. And if you're just starting out in your test prep process, whether you're a junior or a sophomore, it's a little bit early, but still, if you take this class as a sophomore or as a junior just starting out, it's a good way to get your feet wet and learn some of the like sort of tricks of the SAT that you're definitely going to want to use on test day. It's only a 2-day class. It's pretty short. It's like 4 total hours, 2 hours one day, 2 hours another day. But I think it's going to be great. I honestly cannot wait to teach that class. It's going to be awesome. So we've got that coming up. And then, of course, we've got the diagnostics as well. And as Jay mentioned earlier, we are always here and happy to help with tutoring, with college advising. If you feel free to give us a call and we'll, chat through your diagnostic reports with you. Not diagnostic reports, your PSAT reports or your diagnostic reports if you took a diagnostic. And then we'll help you make a test prep plan. Jay is, of course, happy to take a call if you are interested in our college advising services. So just, we're here. Feel free to reach out if you need any help. And I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, we should definitely answer any questions that came in. Let me check that first. But thank you guys very much for being here.
Yep. And if you have any questions, we'll give you guys a minute to type your questions in and we'll make sure to get through every single one.
All right. So great question here. What if my son took the diagnostic and did much better on the ACT, but then got a 1330 on the PSAT? Which test should he study for? So what this suggests to me is that so by the way, the 28 on the ACT is about equivalent. If I'm not mistaken, it's about equivalent to a 1330. I think it's like right around there, 1310, 1320. It's very similar to that 1330 score. So an 1120 on the SAT is much lower than either of those two scores, right? That suggests to me that the 1120 was maybe a bit of a fluke. And look, I mean, that is an unfortunate aspect of testing. And it's the reason, by the way, that colleges are totally fine with students taking the SAT or the ACT or both tests like many, many times, because these two tests are designed to have, like, unfortunately, a good amount of false negatives where students score much lower than they otherwise should because they had a bad day on test day, or there was distractions, the outside that like threw them off for like one section, a few questions in a row. um, but the tests are also designed to have very few false positives, meaning it's incredibly difficult to luck your way into a great score. They don't want students to be able to do that really ever. So both tests are designed that way. So if you get a great score on one of the two tests, it is not a fluke. Like, you earned that score. You are good enough to get that score. And the fluke or flukes or whatever, however many times you've taken the test, really are going to be the lower scores that you got. Those are going to be more of a reflection of you had a not great day on test day. So in your case, 1330 PSAT, 28 ACT, like, we would have to look a little bit more deeply into the results to see, like, where did you struggle on the ACT? Where did you struggle on the PSAT? I mean, there's probably no real struggles, but what were the weaknesses there? And then we could, we could probably determine which of the two tests you're better at from that. We would also probably want to get an understanding from your child as to whether they had a preference for the style of one or the other test. Like, I mean, they're significantly different tests in style, not so much in content, but very much so in style. And if a student like prefers one over the other, like, you want to go with that. You want to prep a student for a test they feel comfortable with, not the one that they don't. Okay. So yeah, I would definitely do that. I would take a look at the detailed results as much as you could. But at the end of the day, too, I gotta say, like, when a student is kind of right down the middle, SAT and ACT, especially if they're very strong at both tests, I don't think you should be splitting hairs and hemming and hawing and wringing your hands about making the right decision, as to whether they're going to be prepping for the SAT or ACT. Like, they're going to do very well on either one, very likely. When it comes down to it, like, if the kid had no preference for one or the other test style, and there's really no way to tell whether they're going to do better on one test or the other from the results, just pick something and move on. Just pick one test and go with it, and you're going to crush that particular test. That would be my advice, Jay.
I completely agree. I think one thing that you said I wholly agree with is asking the student which exam he or she just naturally which exam just felt a little bit more natural to them, right? Came to them a little bit naturally because ultimately you should be prepping for the one that you want to prep for, right? And even if your child may not always be able to articulate as to why they liked one exam over the other, usually most students will say like, yeah, I think I like the SAT more. Well, in that case, because you performed about similarly, I would say, you know what, let's go with the SAT, especially if the timeline for preparation for the test also fits in. Yeah, so completely agree with you there.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, also feel free to reach out to us if you want to like work through the diagnostic report, and the PSAT score report. Like, we would be happy to do that.
Cool. Yeah. I do have another question from a
Sure.
parent. So if we are aiming for selective colleges, does being a semifinalist or a finalist help with the college applications? And the short answer is yes, but not really. So
Great
it is
answer.
certainly it is certainly a really nice honor to have, right? As we had mentioned, it is very difficult to become a semifinalist. Not many students become a national merit semifinalist. So in your college applications, you do have the opportunity to list out your honors and awards. And in that section, you should most definitely indicate if you received a commendation, if you were a national merit semifinalist or a finalist. So, obviously there's so many different criteria when it comes to getting into a college. So I want to say that if you are a semifinalist or finalist, I think it would be a great honor to have, but definitely just not a decision maker.
Great. Any other questions? Please, again, feel free to type them into the Q&A. Let me just check. Nothing right now. Yeah, we'll leave it open for another minute or so. If you guys have any questions, you can type them in now.
Nick, I have a quick question for you.
Oh, okay.
So, if one of the questions that I get from a lot of parents and students is they always ask me, okay, if my PSAT score is X number,
Hmm.
what is the score that I should be aiming for the real?
Oh,
What do you think is a good answer to that reply
yeah.
or
I
to
mean,
the question? Yeah.
sure. It's. I mean, it really is case dependent. It depends on where you're starting from score wise. Like, obviously, there's like limitations. If you score, 1420 on your PSAT, you can't improve by that much, just mathematically. Um, yeah. I mean, I would say, you want to try if you can to have a goal in mind. And that goal should be, if possible, tied to the kinds of colleges that you're like interested in, that you're thinking about applying to. Now, look, I mean, I understand if you're a sophomore, especially if you're a sophomore, but even if you're a junior, I mean, I talk to a lot of parents of juniors even who like they just have no idea where their kid's going to be applying. A lot of people actually use the PSAT or the SAT results as a barometer to determine where they should be looking college wise. But like, yeah, I would say if you can do some research on colleges and determine what you think would be a great fit first, that's the best way to come up with a goal score, and then we can try to get you to that goal score. Of course, like we'll be very transparent with you if you don't think that you'd be able to get there, but I would do that first. Now, like as a general rule of thumb, from sophomore year PSAT, you can probably look to increase your score by, I don't know, 200 to 300 points, but that's like a very, I don't know, that's like a wishy-washy number. It's a moving target. Like some kids we have come in with a, PSAT score in the, 800s or so, and then they end up improving it. Yeah, like I've had kids improve to the 1300s from there. Um, sometimes sometimes you have kids come in with like an 800 score and they don't really improve very much. So there's a lot of different factors in there. I would say though, that on average, 200 to 300 points is what you could expect to improve by with like real concerted effort. Either with a like regimented and guided preparation regimen, like the kind that we would give you with private tutoring or small group classes, or even if you do self study. Again, like the self study is a little bit harder because you got to really, really work at it and sort of stay on top of it yourself. But I would say, yeah, 200 to 300 or so would be my, gun to my head. I got to give you a number. That's the number.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I don't know that there are any other questions coming in, Jay.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it. Hopefully we were able to answer everyone's questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for attending our webinar and feel free to reach out to us. I am happy to set up a free consultation with you and your child where we could sit down for an hour, talk about all things concerning your child's high school journey.
Great. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you so
Hope to
much.
talk to you soon. Take care.
Have a good evening.
Have a
Bye.
good evening.